Hi, Chris Duff over at Serious Land Capital Vacant Land Funding Partner. Today wanted to go over a due diligence issue in relation to land, mainly regarding wastewater, especially in areas where sewers are more present. So wanted to share a story of a deal that we've dealt with and just a little bit more general tactics relating to this particular subject. So generally, there's really only two avenues to handle wastewater for properties that are going to have some type of structural improvement them, and structural improvements that are going to be more residential or potentially commercial in focus. If you have a cabin out in a larger rural property, it's possible you could just have like an outhouse type setup, or a discopy in the woods or whatever. But that's going to be not the most common type of scenario. If you're going to have any type of bathroom set up on site, which is usually a safe assumption for any type of structural improvements, you're going to be looking at either a sewer line being needed or some type of septic system. Now, there's multiple types of septic systems out there. That's a whole nother topic, conventional or aerobic alternative systems. So all that can be covered another time. But generally, if you're looking at infill lots, and I know I've talked about those, and there can be some gray area between what's considered an infill lot versus not an infill lot, or just more rural in general. But on average, infill lots will be more ripe for having a possible sewer system. In particular, a rough guideline for the cutoff in most states. Again, I'm including all these qualifiers because there's no guarantees this is the exact regulations and guidelines for everywhere in the country. But in general, a property needs to be at least a half acre in size to support a septic system. Maybe very occasionally you can get down to like a quarter acre, but probably no lower than that. And usually half acre is going to be the rough guideline for a cutoff. So just keeping that in mind, anytime you're seeing a property that is under a half acre in size, almost always it's going to be in a infill lot type situation. And so you're going to have to be thinking about, all right, what is the sewer situation? So, always key avenue for that is figuring out where the city utilities department, call them up, see if there's an online map, figure out, are there sewer lines available right outside the property in the first place? Some areas of the country and municipalities are going to be much easier to find online maps showing exactly where those sewer lines are. Some you might have to get that info over a phone call. Some, you might need to dive a bit deeper and have kind of a site visit, maybe a contractor who is part of the city's department, or maybe, an engineer who can figure out, is there really sewer available for this particular property? Again, I'm offering a little bit of nebulous guidelines because it varies so much in our experience. Usually it's pretty easy to figure out for various infill lots. And even if you are, you should always be confirming precisely the lot that you're looking at. But, you can usually, have pretty high confidence. Okay, can you see, are the neighboring lots improved, or there are some like recent sales within the neighborhoods, and can see on the existing listings what type of utilities they had and so forth. So that can also be helpful. Or you arrange a site visit, you can notice like sewer grates on the street and all that type of visual cues that are going to be indicative as well. So those are other avenues to have more confidence there. But in situations where you're not really getting a clear answer, and maybe there's not direct improvements right next to the property that you're looking at, and maybe it's a bit more of a side street, and if you're able to get a Yeah, I'm kind of beating around the bush here, just to make this a little bit more concrete. So there was a infill lot that we were looking at in Pacific Northwest, and this one was a while back. But we spent a lot of time on it, so I'm still familiar with the details. But this lot was kind of tucked away in between two main streets, but had some pretty like wild valuations there. I mean, it was had some views of the Pacific Ocean, and it's just an inherent value to lots like this, and some like really solid comps that just had wild price per acres associated with them. So like inherently interesting to that. But you got to have utilities, right? So, and it was definitely below the half-acre threshold. It was definitely below even a quarter acre. So like sewer was absolute requirement for that. But when we were trying to talk to the city and looking at the various utility maps, it did not appear that there was sewer kind of going right along the street where this particular property was. And again, there weren't other structural improvements on that same side street. So it was a bit concerning for us. And so we're like, okay, it seems like we might have to get a sewer line extension. And after enough kind of routine questioning of the city utilities department, they're like, yeah, this appears to be an extension is going to be needed, but they couldn't really provide an answer. So they were able to provide, and I actually think we got this through a realtor who we had already consulted there. And so they actually helped because, some of these city departments are just more difficult to work with. And again, it's been a while since this one happened. I'm trying to repiece together all of the key info. And so, yeah, it was probably the broker who put us in touch with a engineer who could handle sewer extensions. And oftentimes when you're asking for quotes like this, you really can't get a hard quote because sometimes you got to pay even to get an appointment, or it could be 2 or 3 weeks out to even consider or for them to even get back to you on a potential quote. So I'll always just try to get like, can you give me as back of the napkin rough numbers as possible? I don't care. You could be off by 10 grand, maybe even a little bit more, but can you give me like rough guidelines looking at where this property is based on our perimeter measurements? Maybe it's like, I don't know, 70 feet away from where the city indicates that there are sewer lines. What approximately might it cost to extend? Are we looking at 10 grand? 15 grand, 50 grand, like just ballpark type numbers. And so, sometimes you can really try to, force the issue a little bit more to get an answer a little bit quicker and understand whether this is going to be much more significant or not. And so we use that strategy to get a rough ballpark estimate. And it came back very significant. I think it was, I'd have to go back to the initial notes, but it was way more than we thought. It ended up being somewhere between like 30 to 50 grand to extend the sewer line. Yeah, a little over 50 feet if my memory serves. Like a major expense that basically just blew up all of the anticipated margin because, us as land flippers, like we wouldn't be undertaking a sewer line extension generally. I mean, maybe for a much higher value add type of property or where where we can negotiate with the seller and maybe reduce the purchase price enough to still make the anticipated margin work on the deal. Either way, that's still it's a pretty significant risk to take there. Usually, if there's some type of utility type extension, we'll try to just credit an end buyer or bake that into anticipated discount on exit price accordingly there. But because the margin was already so narrow and even with the seller we didn't have much room to even get lower, plus they had a previous listing on the property within like the last 5 years, and I'm always cagey about that type of situation. I'm really trying to sell a lemon, and it seemed like this was the case. They probably came across the exact same issue, or they realized, oh my gosh, this is super high cost for to even consider building on this property. And it had like massive, hard timber, huge trees that were probably going to be like another 20K to possibly remove at least. even on a small property like that. So all of a sudden, like the clearing costs, sewer line extension, all like it removed all of the possible margin in the deal, and we would have had to list it at like 10 or 15K, accounting for all of these costs to the end buyer to even like possibly fit within a reasonable paradigm to try to sell the property. Otherwise, like it wasn't going to be that interesting for people, and so like it just blew up the deal. But like we got really deep into the process reviewing this, and it required multiple calls with brokers and contractors, I think more than one contractor, city, department, and so forth, to uncover this issue. And it was obviously a deal killer. So, and like not that easy to figure out. So I just share that again because you got to be extra certain in this industry. Like it's so easy to get burned, or you rush through your comping process, or just making blanket assumptions. That is the way to lose money. And again, we speak from experience there. Some stuff has slipped past us and we've made bigger mistakes. Fortunately, we caught that one in time before we purchased it. So word to the wise on checking out those type of items. Hopefully that helps as far as some of the tactics could be concerned for uncovering those issues. With that, if you're looking for funding, seriousland.capital, or zero cost review of your land deals at Land Daily Diligence Facebook group, and landpricer.ai for the most simple and accurate way to price land deals. Hopefully this is helpful. Share it with anybody who might find this valuable, or is routinely looking at infill lots. Subscribe, getting a lot of great feedback about this pod. So appreciate you listening. With that, take care. Bye.